immunology and cell biology and neuroscience in neurology at Columbia University Medical Center. He received his master's degree from Charles University in Prague and his PhD from Rockefeller University. He trained after taking a PhD at Columbia University, where he became an assistant professor in 2004 and associate professor in 2012. He serves as a co-director of the Columbia Stem Cell Initiative and as a vice chief of the Division of Regenerative Medicine in the Department of Rehabilitation and Regenerative Medicine. I realized that I have known, I met Hynek 30 years ago, which, if you can imagine, we were both even sexier than we are now. And it's just amazing that he is where he is, and so I'm so delighted to introduce him. And I've seen him do this shtick before, and don't be intimidated if you're not a biologist. He's going to do it in a way that I think we'll all be able to understand. Please welcome Hynek Wichterle.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this generous introduction, and thank you to SVU for bringing me here and giving me the opportunity to torture you for some time about very basic topics that are dealing with developmental biology and stem cells, and how we are trying to use stem cells for the benefit of humankind. So let me just switch to my presentation. I don't have to really, basically, Chris already introduced me, so the only thing that I want to mention is, for conflict of interest, is that I'm a co-founder of a new biotech startup, which is called Progenics, and some of the work that I'll be presenting is now being developed in the startup as a new, for clinical trials. So I'll have to start with a little bit hard slide, and that slide shows you one of the biggest upcoming challenges for our generation and the younger generation, which is the realization that actually as the population ages, there's increasing burden of diseases, late onset degenerative diseases that are burdening not only people who are affected by them, but also financially the medical system. And so you can nicely see that just this pie chart that summarizes the cost of Alzheimer's, of treatment or taking care of Alzheimer's patients annual. And Medicare only is contributing $157 billion annually to care of Alzheimer's patients. It's currently 21% of the Medicare budget. But because the population is aging, and it's estimated that by 2050 the number of people over 70 years old will double, it is estimated that the cost will rise to $360 billion, and that will consume pretty much half of the entire Medicare budget. Now, recently there was a calculation that suggested that if we could simply just delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease by as little as 5 years, that would translate into very significant saving for Medicare. It would save around $140 billion per year. And this would make a big difference. So it's really frustrating that we are still in a situation after so many years where we do not really have any effective treatment that would not even stop the disease, but even just delay it by several years. And this is just Alzheimer's disease. We have to realize that besides Alzheimer's, there are many other diseases, such as Parkinson's disease, affecting the dopaminergic neurons, Huntington's disease, frontotemporal dementia, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is the disease that I'll be focusing on during my presentation here. So while Alzheimer's disease is really affecting our cognitive functions, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, on the other hand, is affecting mostly our motor functions. And so what are motor functions and what are motor neurons that are degenerating in this disease? It turns out that motor neurons are actually So the motor pathway starts in the motor cortex, where people initiate the planned movements, and then the cells found in the motor cortex have long projection that goes all the way to spinal cord. And in spinal cord, these cells make a synapse onto spinal motor neurons that then send axons outside of the central nervous system. They innervate our muscles or organs, and they control all our movements and also visceral functions. So the fine motor skills that are required for Eva Wichterle to play her violin, and they're controlled by these motor neurons, as well as the sequences of movements that are necessary for Jaromír Jágr to succeed in his hobbies. So it's really important, this system, and actually the patients that in whom this system starts to degenerate, it's a really tragic situation because they are cognitively often completely fine, and what happens is that they just watch themselves to lose ability to control their body. Eventually they lose their ability to breathe, and they die. The disease was initially described by Jean-Martin Charcot in Paris in 1869 as a progressive weakness, loss of motor control, and the average survival after diagnosis is now around 4 years. The disease is, although it's pretty rare, it's not as rare as we think. So actually, lifetime risk of contracting or succumbing to ALS is 1 in 300 people. And unfortunately, for 120 years, we really did not have any insight into what is causing this disease until actually Bob Brown, at the time at Harvard University, discovered in a family that had a hereditary form of ALS, a mutation in a gene. He identified a gene called SOD1, and he identified there are actually a number of mutations in different patients, and realized eventually that these mutations cause actually misfolding of the protein. And the misfolding of proteins is something important because actually pretty much all degenerative diseases, from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, all the way to ALS, are often associated with accumulation of misfolded protein in the cells that are dying. So just to explain what I mean by misfolding protein is proteins are basically sequences of amino acids that can be hundreds of amino acids long, and this string of amino acids has to fold often into some complex globular or folded structures, and if the string falls in a wrong way, the protein will not be functional, and often the cell recognizes it as a bad protein and has to get rid of it. And so somehow these mutations often cause protein misfolding, and these accumulated proteins in the cells lead to the degenerative disease eventually. Unfortunately, despite actually knowing and understanding some of these etiologies of ALS, we have now more than 20 different genes identified that patients with inherited forms of ALS in which we can find mutations, and often these mutations as well as in SOD1 cause protein misfolding. There were in excess of 60 clinical trials now for different treatments for ALS, and out of that there is currently only 3 approved therapies, and each of these therapies only prolong survival by several months, so there is nothing really effective. So we can sort of summarize this timeline as 150 years of failures to try to understand and treat the disease. So during my